folks, this is a journey we are on towards being better. We're talking about managing self, managing others, and managing systems and processes. That's where we are in this segment of the book. And we're continuing our conversation through this chapter, chapter 15, looking at building a high-performance team. We've looked at building out that charter, determining who you are, why you are, how you will get to where you want to be, shaping yourself, so to speak. We look at some of the dysfunctions that are possible within that team and how we can begin to resolve them. And as we go on, we're now looking today at the team roles and responsibilities, Joan. This is so critical because oftentimes a lot of people would want to leave it to see how it falls into place and hope that it works. But you're saying, no. This is also a critical component of building out that high-performance team.
Indeed. And a lot of the frustration that leaders experience in seeking to lead a team and a particular individual just not getting the type of performance, the type of response that you would like to get is oftentimes because there's a lack of understanding of that individual's default or preferred role in a team environment. I remember years ago, I was the general manager for a particular organization, and our receptionist, I just couldn't understand why this beautiful woman was always so grumpy. And, it came down to the fact that where her desk was positioned, the time clock was there. So everyone, as they came in the morning, would go to her desk, put their lunch bag and all their other curriculums down on her desk so they could punch in. And that just upset her for the rest of the day because she was someone who loved order, someone who liked everything to be in the right place. When I moved that time clock from on her desk, it was like flipping a switch on her personality. She became this pleasant woman all day long because she no longer started her day by being discomforted by the fact that I had put her in a position that was against her natural inclination, and so traumatizing her on a daily basis. So that little change was so impactful. Remember what I said her role was receptionist. So if your receptionist is miserable, that's the first point of contact. So understanding how people show up in a team environment, what their preferences are, position us to be better at leading our team.
Which means you had to be paying attention. And oftentimes we become so busy as leaders that we don't pay attention to the individual, not just the bigger picture, but the actual individual and the whole thing and who they are and their role and responsibilities within that team so we can better position or better create the environment where they can thrive. And so this area that we're looking at speaks to that because you started this area by saying the basic building block of good team building is for a leader to promote the feeling that every human being is unique and adds value. Every human being is unique and adds value. And sometimes, and again, we keep saying it right through the book as well, people are not simply product members of, what's the word again, the term?
Units of production.
Units of production. That's right. They are people with hearts and emotions and feelings and thoughts and ideas and passion. And if we're not able to recognize all of that, then we're missing a wonderful opportunity.
Indeed. And when you can tap into that, when you can reach out to them in a way that resonates with them, it unleashes that discretionary effort. So people go above and beyond when they feel seen, heard, or felt. And notice what I said, seen, heard, or felt, because some people, their preference is to be acknowledged as being seen. Some people want to be heard. Some want to be felt. So again, it's about getting to know your people. And I know that there's some folks who say, listen, I have enough work on my desk without having to do all this peopling. Let me tell you, when you do peopling, the work becomes easier because again, you're going to leverage, you're going to unleash that discretionary effort.
You're quite right. Familiarity with the individual's strengths and weaknesses and likes and dislikes of the members of my high-performance HR team enabled you to craft, you gave your example, a similar game plan. That game plan is one of the things I want to move on to talk about now, which is using the Belbin's team roles. And I want to be able to break that down so that we see the different components of the different people who show up to work every single day and how we can mold them into a high performance team. So Joan, let's look at the Belbin team roles and the diagram you have expressed in the book. Could you describe what that means, because you've used it, and could you describe from it the different characteristics that you explore in a team?
Absolutely. So this is not my original work. It's named after Dr. Meredith Belbin out of the UK. And I'm really delighted because when I was writing the book, I sought their permission to use the model. They came on board and they even have partnered with me. So anyone who purchases my book and would like to have their team role assessment done, they get a hefty discount from Belbin. So yes, there are a number of preferences, roles that people can assume within a team environment. So for example, let's start with the shaper, because a lot of managers turn out to be shapers. Shapers are persons with a lot of drive and determination. You put an obstacle in their way, they're going to figure out how to get over it, under it, around it, and move it out of the way. I'll put my hand up and acknowledge I'm a shaper. We can stress other people out because we're so, fast paced. We want things moving. We don't like inertia, right? So I've highlighted the strengths as well as the weaknesses, because we can be a little bit intolerant about people who don't run at the same speed that we do, because we tend to be racehorses, right? So high powered, a lot of pent up energy ready to go. But you need shapers on your team. And as a matter of fact, you need all the roles in your team. But we need to be aware that each role has its strengths, but it also has its allowable weaknesses. So sometimes the racehorses need to be reined in. And if you see we're not reining ourselves in, then somebody else needs to do it so that we don't traumatize everyone else. So that's a shaper. Another role is a coordinator, and shapers sometimes need the coordinators to be right there alongside us, because the coordinator, as the name suggests, will ensure that everything gets dealt with, because the shapers, we can be so busy driving through that sometimes we may overlook things. The coordinator is the one now who's going to keep an eye on how everything is going, make sure that all the pieces are coming together in a way that will help the team to advance. Potential downside with the coordinator, sometimes you look at them kind of side eye and wonder, okay, so what are you going to actually do? Apart from telling everybody else what they should be doing. You want to put your hand to the wheel here and help us to get this done? So that's a allowable weakness with a coordinator. Tell me, which one you want me to go to next?
There's the resource investigator. I mean, there are 9 of them. There are different 9 of them. And sometimes they too get themselves very involved.
Listen, the resource investigator, the best way I know to describe them is, that person that always know a guy that can do something, right? That's the resource investigator. They have an amazing network. The potential downside, they might not be doing much themselves, but they always know a guy. You need a truck? Yeah, man, I know a guy that have a truck. I don't get him for you. You need whatever you need. The resource investigator will help you to get that resource on board.
So, there are a number of different areas. So there's the resource investigator, the team worker, the plant, the monitor evaluator, the specialist, the implementer, the complete finisher. There are many people within our organizations who we can easily identify that fit all of those roles and responsibilities and the characteristics, but there are always downsides to everything. So in even managing that team for its effectiveness, we must recognize that there will be the other side. The positive is great, but the other side, you must now be able to rein them back in when need be. Because when you go to the excessive one, you affect the productivity of the other. So that's critical.
Exactly.
Can we, as we develop as a team, though, change roles as we go? I could start out today as a shaper and tomorrow become somebody else, a resource investigator. Is that possible?
Absolutely. And that comes with self-awareness and self-regulation. Remember where we started with emotional intelligence and knowing yourself. So if you're leading a team and you realize that, okay, I don't have anyone on the team who's a completer finisher. And completer finishers are really important. These are the folks who will, go over the report before you, send it up the chain of command to make sure that the I's are dotted, the T's are crossed. So if you don't have anyone on your team with those natural tendencies, then you may have to take on the role, or you may have to designate someone to take on a role. And when you ask somebody on the team to take on a role that doesn't come that naturally to them, it's what we call a team role sacrifice. So
Yes.
we know this isn't exactly in your comfort zone, but when I look at the entire team, I think you're the one best positioned to help us to do that because of the other competencies that we bring to the table. So it's possible, yes, that people can perform outside of their default roles. But as the leader, if you're making that request of them, recognize that it is a sacrifice. So you don't want to abuse it, and you want to acknowledge when gone above and beyond to make that type of contribution to the team.
And that's why the book is structured in the way it is, because to get to that point, you must have built up the trust, the relationship, better understanding of the people, emotionally connect in many ways as well, so that you can now actually broach that subject so that people can actually begin to agree. But there's some caveats you also listed in this chapter, because we're heading to the end of this chapter, that talk about, a little bit about the sacrifice and so forth. So what are the pitfalls that we need to avoid so that we don't ourselves abuse the people who we're working with?
Yeah, and again, it's about having the conversation with them so that they know that you're aware that this is
Mhm.
going to require more of them. So you acknowledge that this is a request that I'm making of you. I know that it's going to require you to step out of your comfort zone for the good of the team, and I appreciate that. And again, don't keep going back to the same person all the time. And remember, as you're assigning duties to them, ensure that you leverage your knowledge, your awareness, your understanding of what their preferences would be. So if you find that you have somebody who is, say, for example, they are one that we didn't deal with, a team worker,
Mhm.
right? These are the people persons. They, anytime you want to organize a fete, a lime, or just look after somebody that's not feeling well, your team worker people, that's their jam, because they really they get energy from bringing people together,
Yes.
taking care of people. You don't want to put that person to sit down in a room by themselves to do data entry. You're going to kill their spirit,
Yes.
right? So understanding that, and even if they can't articulate it,
Mhm.
you as the leader, you having become aware of these team roles, in a coaching conversation, you can help them to understand feeling unhappy. Yeah? Your natural
Yes.
tendency is to be more oriented towards engaging others. You have found yourself in a position where you're working in isolation, you're doing a job that doesn't require much interaction, and that's why you're not bringing as much to the table. And so you
Right.
may, even if you can't change their substantive duties, give them some assignments that give them the opportunity to interact a bit more.
Indeed. And so this is such a powerful chapter. We've come to the end of it now, but at the end of it, folks, if you have this book, you have a special discounted offer. And you will see it once you read this. We get to this particular chapter in the book as well that you can benefit from in the Belbin model. So, Joan, as always, I want to thank you today. And I do look forward to next week when we move on to coaching for performance. Coaching for performance is a big task as well, as we move our way through the manager's first aid kit. As always, thank you, Joan. Have yourself a wonderful week until next week. God spare life.
You do the same.